Are England going to put a smile on your face tomorrow, James?
I mean, they should. They
wow,
should.
There was a pause.
Well, look. Okay, here's the situation. I think with England, there's a lot of the sort of narrative around England is that because half of this squad, half of the 26-man group, were not in Qatar. So, the idea that there's a massive evolution, that it's a squad imbued with new, young talent, players who have not had the experience of failure in the past, who are kind of only know the Southgate way or the Southgate era, and they come to make that final step that England need to make to finally win a trophy. And I was looking this afternoon on one of the many train delays that I had at the England-France quarter-final in Qatar, which is only 18 months ago. You know, you've got to remember this is not a regular tournament cycle. It is a little bit shorter. The team that started that game: Pickford, Walker, Stones, Maguire, Shaw, Henderson, Rice, Bellingham, Saka, Kane, Foden. Now, there is a doubt about Luke Shaw in the first game, but we know he's been brought because they think he'll be fit. Gareth actually tonight was talking quite positively about he may even be able to play as a substitute against Serbia in the first game. So let's slot Shaw into that team.
Okay.
You're only missing Maguire and Henderson. And I think everybody would have probably have said after that tournament that those were the two weak links in that team. So 9 of the 11, if everybody's fit and all things being equal, are still from that team that wasn't good enough in Qatar and got knocked out in a very tight game of fine margins. Kane misses the penalty in the last 5-10 minutes, whatever it was. You know, could have gone to extra time, all of that. So I'm not quite sure there's this sort of progression in the team and in the squad that people think. So I think England have still got the same question to answer, which they had 18 months ago, which is, can they deliver in the biggest games against the biggest teams on foreign soil? And that last bit is really important because they won the World Cup at Wembley. They reached the Euro 96 semi-final at Wembley. They reached the last Euros playing 6 of the 7 games at Wembley. And now they're here in Germany. And that really is an unknown. They don't have the pedigree. They're not proven at this level in these competitions. And Serbia, I think, will be a tricky start for them. You know, they've got obviously everyone's focusing on Vlahovic and Mitrovic in terms of the attacking talent that they have. And England's weak point is in defence. That is still the issue. Mm-hmm. They're still not great without the ball. And I'm not sort of suggesting they can't win it, because I do think they've got the individual players to be able to go and win a tournament like this. But I think the question that is being asked of England is still the same as it was 18 months ago, which is why I'm not quite sure why they're favourites ahead of someone like France, who obviously have the pedigree. They've been there, they've done it. And then we look at the teams that have started really well, the heavyweights, Spain, Germany. I know Italy weren't that great tonight, but they've all won. They've all looked, in moments pretty good. So
he was eating his pizza. You didn't watch the game. You didn't watch the first half. They were really good. They were really, really good. You didn't watch the first half.
Do you know what, Gab? I was on a train. It may stun you tonight. I was on yet another train. But no, I'm saying, I mean, in many ways, you're making my point for me, which is that the sort of heavyweights, the powerhouses, Italy, the defending European champions, they've been there, they've done it, they've won it. You know, I just get very uncomfortable with this idea that, England are favourites and England are going to come here and their big players are going to turn up and they're going to deliver. They have not got the track record of doing that, which is not to say they can't do it, but they've got to prove it in a way that other countries don't.
I think James needs some cheering up here. Look, you're doing the typical thing, right? I'm going to out you as an England fan. I do the same with Italy, right? We're more likely to look at all the negatives and so on. The reality is, I think it's a good thing that 9 of the 11 players are back because, like you said, it was so close against France. I think it's a good thing that actually the core of this group is generally the same as the one that reached the semifinals of the World Cup in 2018 and lost on penalties in the last Euros. I think these are actually positives because you've got people who learn from defeat and who grow. And if they're still there, it's because they're better than some of the other guys they brought in. Now, did I need to see Adam Wharton at the Euros as opposed to somebody else? I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't seen much of him for Palace, so I don't know. When we can go and quibble about that, hopefully that guy will never play because everybody will be fit and will be doing well if you're an England fan. What I find interesting, I want to ask you about, is these reports that he's going to move Trent into midfield. Now, obviously, we say that Southgate is conservative and sort of safety first and whatever. But look, here he's doing something that some people will say is logical, but which, I think other than a couple of friendlies, he's never really done for England. I think he might have done it. He did it as a kid for Liverpool, obviously the youth team, but he's done it very rarely in the first team. How do you see that planning out? And what's his mindset there?
Well, you're right, Gab, because I think that strikes to the absolute heart of the whole debate around Southgate, which is, you've got all these attacking players. How are you going to make them click? I mean, the big difference between we talk about the 9 of the 11. The big difference, of course, is that since then, Jude Bellingham's gone on to great things at Real Madrid. Declan Rice is now a £100 million player. Phil Foden was the player of the year in England. Harry Kane's just scored 44 goals in Germany. The attacking players individually have developed so much at club level. That's where the expectation comes from. What I'm saying is that they can go and put it together with England is the unknown. My understanding is that there is a debate going on, or there was a debate going on about whether it would be Trent Alexander-Arnold or Conor Gallagher. It's between those two to start alongside Declan Rice in what is probably going to be a 4-2-3-1 system for England tomorrow night. And that, I think after Iceland, when they lost 1-0 at home, they weren't great. Yes, there were a lot of mitigating circumstances. It's a warm-up game. Who cares really about the result? And a lot of players needed the minutes. They were managing a lot of players' fitness through that at that stage. Bellingham obviously didn't even play because he was given a week off after winning the Champions League with Real Madrid. But I do wonder whether Southgate's slightly obsessed with this idea of balance in the team. And when he talks about balance, that kind of implies an inherent caution and a conservatism that I know, Gab, you've written about before. I've certainly done the same. And I've sort of felt all week that he would lean towards Gallagher because he might think, wow, the attacking players that Serbia have got, maybe we need a runner in there alongside Rice. If you're asking Rice to essentially anchor the midfield and play someone who's slightly more advanced, Trent, obviously a defender sort of by trade, but not, is an unknown in that position, as you say. That is a risk, but maybe it will unlock those 4 attacking players ahead of him: the Bellinghams, the Kanes, the Fodens, the Sakas. But he's talked really positively about Trent learning that role, understanding that role. From what I'm told from sources, they've been training with Trent in midfield this week. So I think it leans towards the idea that Trent maybe will start against Serbia tomorrow. But that's the ultimate balancing act. Does he go for it, or does he think, actually, exactly as Calvin Phillips was in the last Euros, I want someone who just will sit in a little bit more, someone who maybe can press a bit better, won't kick on as an 8, as a 6, but wants to be an 8, will actually just sit there and hold a little bit more, which is what Conor Gallagher will give you. And that really is the only unknown. I think we know the other 10. I think it's pretty set.
It's not a case of playing devil's advocate here, but from the outside looking in, is there any way you can get the 4 plus Palmer and maybe Rice? And you've spoken about Conor Gallagher. And it's a bit gung-ho, but you tell me a defence that could cope with that front 5. I mean, it might be 3-2 or 4-3.
Yeah. No, you're right. Well, there is a way of doing it, and that is to play 4-3-3 and play Rice as the single pivot, and then play. Yeah. You could play Foden and Bellingham as the 8s, and then you can get Saka, Palmer, and Kane in the team as the front 3. I don't think he won't do that, and I think the Iceland game shows you why, because they lost Kobbie Mainoo lost. They basically lost the ball. Kobbie Mainoo was playing more as an 8 because that's clearly his natural instinct is to get forward a little bit more. And they got done on transition. And Gareth Southgate, he did an interview with us, which went out when did it go out? This week. And he talked a lot about how Didier Deschamps sort of got killed for, being too cautious and too conservative in his teams. And then he ended that answer by saying, but then when a team gets done on transition, if you're too open, people kill you for it. And you say you're naive and you've not given due respect, due credit to the opposition. And that answer's really sort of stuck in my mind about that. So he's sort of flitted between 4-2-3-1 and 4-3-3 on occasion since Qatar, but really it's been 4-2-3-1. And I think his gamble will be to play Trent in that system rather than playing 4-3-3 and getting them all in, which is maybe what people will want to see if England don't win the first game. And I do think because there's this whole kind of conversation around Southgate's future and, is he going to stay on after the Euros? Is the only scenario where he does that if he wins it. If they don't win that first game, and they've won all 3 of their tournament games under Southgate, the first games of every tournament they've won, and it's just sort of helped set the tone for it. And I think that's why there won't be any complacency from England tomorrow. I think they'll be bang at it. But if they don't win that first game, that's where the questions will come in and say, well, especially when you see, Germany scoring 5 and Spain scoring 3, and it's been quite an exciting opening to the tournament, isn't it? If England sort of stink the place out tomorrow, or kind of, maybe win 1-0 with a set piece or whatever, then I think those questions are only going to grow louder.
Gab, who should Gareth Southgate play if what James is saying is correct, which we believe it is? It's between Conor Gallagher and Trent Alexander-Arnold. Which of those pair would you hand the starting jersey to?
So I feel a little bad for Conor Gallagher because there's this idea that he puts in a shift, he works really, really hard. And, and this is kind of what I struggle with, hasn't been part of a debate, right? But Jude Bellingham has played in this advanced role for Real Madrid all season long, right? And so back with England, 4-2-3-1, let's play Jude there, right? Never mind that for most of his career, that's not where he actually played. Conor Gallagher for Chelsea has effectively played an attacking midfield all year long, right? He had Enzo and Moises Caicedo behind him. Now with England, it becomes, Rice is good carrying the ball forward, and I want somebody more solid. So let's got Conor Gallagher to play in defensive midfield. Look, Conor Gallagher would play goalkeeper if you ask him to, and he would give you 1,000% effort. But I kind of feel it would make sense if you are going to press and be proactive. I would prefer the idea of playing maybe 4-2-3-1 with Conor Gallagher actually in that 10 to go and disrupt the opposition's build-up play, if that's what you're going to do. Now, we know Southgate's not going to do that. We know Southgate is conservative, so more likely he's going to sit back. And if you're going to do that, I kind of prefer Trent's long-term passing, especially because my fear with Serbia is that because, they're going to be cautious too. And they've got this issue where we have so many attacking players that we're going to ask Sergej Milinkovic-Savic to, effectively sit very, very deep. They have to carry, Tadic plus 2 big strikers in Vlahovic and Mitrovic. Now, if these guys run around and they start, this is the other thing to think about, right? If Vlahovic and Mitrovic put in a shift, which they sometimes do, and they go and they let England have the ball, and they go and they start, getting up Rice's backside. Rice is a phenomenal player, but he is not necessarily the most press resistant guy out there. So maybe having another passer alongside him, whether it's Bellingham deeper, which again, I don't think he's going to do, or whether it's Trent, might actually make sense. Because you know what? You look at that back four, and other than Stones, and that's another option, I suppose, Stones stepping up into midfield. We've seen him do that with City. Do we expect him to do that with England? Not so much. But in that back four, other than Stones, you don't really have, I think, anybody who's particularly good at passing and kind of being that extra outlet in the build-up if they do press you. So I think these are some of the other thoughts that haven't maybe been part of the conversation, but which are probably going through Southgate's head as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you're right in the sense of that Stones, I don't think will. I mean, the problem is because England have lost Maguire, there's no way that Stones won't be just anchored at centre back. It looks like it's going to be Martin Gahey who plays alongside him. I mean, Southgate talked quite positively tonight about, as I said earlier, that Luke Shaw could maybe play some part against Serbia, but he won't start. So that will be Trippier at left back. It'll be Walker at right back, and then it will be, as we're talking about the two, and then I think the front four will kind of pick themselves really at this point in the tournament, given what they've done at club level and and their reputation and everything else. So, yeah, I would expect a positive start from England. I really would. You know, it's ingrained in me. I'm of the generation to think that something is going to go wrong. It's just the way we are with England.